if you could, please.
Hi, everyone. Welcome to Café IBTTA. I'm Pat Jones. My guest today is Mark Compton, CEO of the Pennsylvania Turnpike Commission, a position he's held since February of 2013. Mark previously served as PennDOT's Deputy Secretary of Administration, overseeing 8 bureaus within the agency. Before joining PennDOT, Mark was Director of Government Affairs for American Infrastructure, a heavy civil construction company in Worcester, PA. Prior to that, he worked in various public and private operations, focusing largely on transportation, construction, and economic development. Mark has served on the IBTTA Board of Directors since 2015. He currently serves as IBTTA's first Vice President and will be IBTTA's President next year. Mark, welcome to Café IBTTA. It's great to have you with us.
Thank you, Pat. It's great to be here. I've been striving to be on this call for the last 17 weeks, and finally you fit me in. So thank you very much, Pat.
And as Mark said, we're trying to break a record, so please encourage your friends to join Café IBTTA today so Mark can have the bragging rights that he so richly deserves. Well, this is Café IBTTA, where we drink coffee and talk about things that are interesting, relevant, uplifting, and fun. And a big shout out today to Cubic for providing me my coffee mug today. And there's the hashtag, We Are Cubic on the back. So thank you so much to our friends at Cubic. And thanks to you, all the members of IBTTA, for supporting us throughout this very challenging year. We really appreciate the support and look forward to seeing you in person one day soon. Well, we are taking your questions. We encourage you to use the chat function on your screen and set it to all panelists and attendees. And we want to get you engaged early. So in the chat function, please write a word or phrase that expresses your feelings about Pennsylvania, the Keystone State, and the Pennsylvania Turnpike. You can put your feelings in the chat function right now. Let's see what we have. All right, we've got home, awesome, incredible, Philly, home, great neighbor, historic, chocolate, innovators. What do you see there that resonates with you, Mark?
The best, superior to all other toll authorities in the nation. All kinds of stuff there. Looks really, really good. I can't argue with any of those, Pat.
Pittsburgh has one of the best baseball parks. All right. Well, let's get down to business. And Mark, we'll come back to some of these comments a little bit later on, but I wanted to start with something fun. The Pennsylvania Turnpike Commission has won Toll Excellence Awards in 4 out of the last 10 years, including 3 President's Awards in 2011, 2012, and 2019. In February of this year, you threw down the gauntlet to some of your toll agency peers.
I wouldn't say it that way, Pat.
And you wrote a note that went something like this: colleagues, I felt it was important to send you this note. It would be a complete waste of time for your organizations to submit for the Toll Excellence Awards this year. With the PTC's multiple submittals, my expectation for this year is to take every category, thus leaving the fine folks on the selection committee no choice but to award the PTC with the President's Award. Again. If I were in your shoes, I'd want to take this information before wasting my time. Let the games begin. Good luck to all of you 2019 losers. Well, then you said, all kidding aside, let's overwhelm the committee this year. This is only worthwhile because it is sought after by people like you. Great throwdown, Mark. So tell us about these awards and why they're so important to PTC.
Yeah, and first of all, we want to thank David Mockemer for all his work on the awards committee, and with him, not showcasing the Pennsylvania Turnpike this year. Just want to make an announcement. This is his last year as our awards chair, and we would certainly, anyone who has a Pennsylvania Turnpike email address, if you want to submit to be the awards chair, we'd love to have you next year. Of course, I'm kidding. David does a great job with this committee. One thing I love about our industry is our passion. Our passion to be the best, and our passion to strive to be the best, and that is always showcased with these awards. So a key thing for us is to always make sure we put our best foot forward in doing so. And what we really strive to do here at the PTC is have a culture of innovation. Because the underlying principle is innovation in government can be very difficult. And candidly, the reward, risk reward thing is all backwards. So the risk side is if it doesn't go well, that can go bad. But the reward side is you pat people on the back and say, great job. So we've worked really hard, for a culture here, and led really by our Innovation Council that makes sure that those folks that want to step out and those folks that look at these things in such a manner that says we can do this a different way, they've got support mechanism around them to do so. And I love it when we fail, because what that does, it shows that we're stretching, and it shows that we're striving to continue to be better. And a lot of the ideas that have come from the Innovation Council or have gone to the Innovation Council have really been in some of our darkest days as a commission, some of our toughest days as a commission, to where a lot of key members of staff would sit around and say, how are we going to do this better? How are we going to make sure we're not back in this spot? And the quality and the character of the folks here, they strive and find a way, and typically they do. And that's really a lot of the things that we've submitted on these last few years. So that's really the key reason why these awards mean so much, because we're competitive together. But in the same manner, when one of us win the award, I love the fact that anyone who wins, regardless of agency, is always welcoming each of us into the back door behind the scenes to really show them what it's about, so we can share in that success as well. So that's some of the great things about the industry and our strive to be the best.
Mark, I love your comment about I love it when we fail, because that leads to a look inward and continuing to work on your strengths and trying to eliminate those weaknesses. It reminds me of that expression, anything worth doing is worth doing horribly, until you get better at it. So really like that.
Absolutely.
Mark, let's talk a little bit about 2021. You're going to be president next year. And a couple of things we've talked about are things like a task force on revenue loss and leakage, a new committee on engineering best practices, and expanding the mentoring program. Let's take those subjects one at a time and tell us your thoughts. Let's start with the task force on revenue and loss leakage.
Sure, and I want special thanks to Jessica Carson from E470, who's agreed to chair this effort with us for us. And in doing so, really, there's a reality that there's very few industries that would accept the fact that 50% accounts receivable, or collections of 50% of accounts receivable, is something that we're okay with. And toll by plate, that has really become industry standard. If you beat 50% in the first 30 days, you've achieved industry standard. That's not good enough. And what I found with, I think it was the CEO roundtable that we did maybe last year or the year before, is that each agency is focused on this, and it's reached the CEO level, so there's concern in it, but we're all tackling this very differently. Chris Tomlinson, in our time together in that, laid out a process in which he did, which we tried to copy and mimic. So I know there's a lot of those type of practices that are happening across the country, across the world, that really, we think with Jessica's leadership is going to be able to harness that, and we can all use that for the betterment of the industry. So that's really a key, and we want to get into how they transponder marketing, there's fraud and abuse in some of those programs. We want to tackle some of those things. So I think the list is really endless for what that group can get into.
Mark, let's talk about another initiative, something having to do with engineering best practices. We used to have an engineering committee at IBTTA. It's kind of been in the background for a while. Talk to us about that.
Yeah, sure. So this really started out of when Chris Tomlinson was president. He started the peer review groups. And in doing so, we went into that with the feeling that we knew our peers pretty well. We were tied with New Jersey and with Illinois. And I got to tell you, we own a bridge together with New Jersey. But in putting together each of those components, there's two groups that really, really flourished and really spent a lot of time together. One was engineering, and the other one was IT. And the engineering calls would start based on being a half hour, would go a lot longer, an hour, hour and a half. So that sort of dawned on me and really John Keller and others to say, there's really opportunity here for us to continue sharing these best practices in construction, because we as an entity on this side really compare ourselves to the DOT, and that's a great comparator, but it's not the only comparative. And really, in the way in which we're all laser focused on our roadway, the way in which each of us as tolling entities focus on our customer, and really how that relates back to contracts with our contractors and our engineers, we have a lot to talk about. So I'm really excited for the work of what that group's going to be able to get into in those areas.
Mark, mentoring is another big topic for you, and it's been a big topic for our current president, Samuel Johnson. He's put a lot of emphasis on trying to bring new people into the industry at the entry-level positions by focusing on our scholarship fund, trying to get folks like that interested in mentorship programs and the Leadership Academy Alumni Association. You've got some ideas about expanding mentoring to include another segment of individuals in the industry.
Yeah, and just a shout out to Samuel. What a great wartime president. He's been outstanding. I've learned a ton from him, and really to take hold of what he did with the immersion program is to really also find opportunities for mentoring for those who are coming up in the tolling world. I myself came over to tolling from the DOT and from a contractor perspective, but the tolling component was lost on me. But for people like Frank McCartney, who helped me emerge a lot quicker, I found those type of relationships. We want to make that a little easier. So what we'd like to do is use the past presidents group for any new board of director member who'd like it, as well as anybody in a toll agency that is achieving to become a senior level, achieving or has become senior level in the toll authority, to really have those type of, we want to foster those type of relationships. So it'd be voluntary on both ends, because mentoring doesn't work unless both parties want to do it. But we'd like to reach out to the past presidents to see who's interested on their end, and then also back from the agency perspective to see who's interested on their end to be partnered. And I really think that's just the next step of what has been started with tolling immersion under Samuel.
We are taking your questions, and we have a question here, Mark, from Tyler Milligan. He's asking about Act 44/Act 99 contributions to the state and its continued impact on the Turnpike's operations and finances. What are your thoughts about that and its continuation?
Yeah, great question, Tyler. And that's, if you're asking one of the things that keep us up at night here in Pennsylvania, it's clearly that. So of our total indebtedness as an organization is about $14 billion. $7 billion of that has gone to what's Act 44, which is for we required to bond and give bond 400 to 450 million annually to the to PennDOT, now entirely for mass transit. So under COVID, now that our traffic is down, as of the end of July, we've lost about $187 million based on this time last year as to where we should be. So we've asked for an extension of that ability to pay it, meaning that we're to make quarterly payments, and we've been given a reprieve until at least until January. The hope is that our state legislature will act in November when they're doing their revenue enhancement and get us out of this obligation. But if that doesn't happen, at the very least, the law calls for this sunset in 2022, and we're aggressively taking that message to all parties that have listened, General Assembly, Governor's Office, to make sure they know that we have to have a hard stop at the end of that time. I'm not asking for a subsidy. We're just asking to be left alone, and that's really the message that we continue to try to muster over for what we call the front office and Capitol Hill.
Mark, you mentioned the loss of $187 million in revenue as a result of response to the pandemic. The pandemic has brought a lot of other changes to toll agencies across the world, including PTC. One of those is sort of a sudden move to all electronic tolling. Talk to us a little bit about that and some of the ramifications that's had on the agency.
Yeah, and it was, I think our person that runs fares for us, Stacy Ritter, put it best when she said it was a very, very difficult decision, but it was the right decision. So because we've had the plan here at the PTC to go into all electronic tolling, we had the apparatus in the lane set up to be able to do so now. So the timeline that we were originally operating under, absent COVID, was going to be October of next year. And what we were waiting for, what the process was entailing, was us to really outfit our back office to make sure that the back office, the customer service component, was ready. Well, in the middle of March, we made the decision based on the CDC, Department of Health, and the governor's recommendation to do what you can to be working from home or be touchless with your customers, which then, because we had the apparatus, we're able to do so. We went cashless in March. And candidly, when we pulled the switch, we thought it would be 2 weeks, as we all probably did back on that St. Patrick's Day weekend. Well, as we sit here today, I'm sitting in an empty office. I'm here, but there's three or four of us in our central office, and the guidance from our governor is that no one will be back to a state office building until at least January. So, understanding how that was unfolding throughout the spring, our commissioners made the very difficult decision on June 2nd that we will maintain AET in place and will not return to cash collections. And that decision was made on a multitude of reasons. One was made on the safety of our customers and the employees based on the touch point. Other one was the operational challenges of now telling our customers that we're going to go back to cash collection, realizing that it was working. And third is really the understanding that we had the capacity to do it because of the lower traffic. So we made the decision. It has worked well for us. The painful part has been the people aspect and the timeline that changed due to COVID. There's no question about that. So it's been a difficult time for the PTC, but now the system is really opened up to all customers, regardless if they have a transponder or not. And our system is a lot less confusing now, and the roadway is also safer.
We are taking your questions, and Barbara Gannon, the long-serving director of IBTTA's Leadership Academy, is with us. She has a question asking about how your experience with PennDOT prepared you for your role as CEO of the Pennsylvania Turnpike Commission, and perhaps even in the area of negotiating on Act 44.
Yeah, so several years ago, and there's an old statement that the yellow and the orange, PennDOT has the yellow truck, the Turnpike has the orange. Never in a road should the two shall meet. And candidly, there was a lot of time years and years ago, especially when the formation of Act 44, when that was the case. There was a lot of trust issues, and as coming over from the DOT, I understood that a lot of hardworking people are over there. Their mission and focus has to be a lot different because of the breadth. And really, it's the understanding. There wasn't a whole lot of understanding what happened over here at the PTC side. So, coming from there, and then coming over here, I must tell you that I think I had at least an understanding of the hard work that they did at the DOT and tried to bring that over here. And then inversely, also, and back with my DOT colleagues, tried to convey the same message that the folks at the Turnpike cared just as much about their customers and the roadway and their colleagues as you do. And it's really trying to do that message. And we really worked hard at sort of two different areas. And one was called TQI, which was really trying to rebuild the trust relationships, not just between the two owner entities, as we called it, but also with the contracting and the engineering community. And that came after we did Act 89 in 2013, which was, if you think about the time frame that was, the trust relationships were struggling across the industry because work was so was shut down based on the economy. And in construction jobs, when you should have seen 3, 4, 5 bidders, you saw 12, 14, 15. And the folks that won it were screaming low and weren't going to make any money and just trying to keep their folks working. And they approached the trailer the same way, and ours did the same. So really, we tried to work hard to bridge gaps across the industry, and I think that has made strides. Just a lot of successes in this approach, and one was really during COVID, to where our folks on the engineering side worked along on the side of folks of the DOT on the engineering side, and to put a COVID-19 plan together that had our folks back and working within a couple of weeks. So there's a lot of great things that have come out of the relationship and the realization that we both have a place here.
Mark, speaking of bridging the gaps between different aspects of the tolling industry and transportation, Rush Wicks has a question. Does a shift to AET on the Turnpike open up the possibility of establishing more direct connections between the Turnpike and other interstates in Pennsylvania?
Yes, it certainly does when we reach a point to where we have the gantries up. So right now, we're on AET in place, which is using the current configuration at our current interchanges. The goal is to get high-speed gantries up across the roadway, no longer using the interchanges. Once we do that, the price of the interchanges come down drastically. So we have one on the books in the Norristown area near Philadelphia that if we had to put tolling apparatus around that interchange, you'd have to do the trumpet design and building into the tolling apparatus. It's basically a $100 million interchange. Without it, you can do a diamond style interchange, a lot less real estate taken, a lot easier on, no permitting is easy anymore, a lot less egregious on the permitting side, and basically in today's dollars, that's about a $50 million interchange, to give you a sense of the possibilities once we get the Gantz result, for sure.
So, Mark, that sort of feeds into a question about cuts in capital programs. With AET, it seems like you don't need as much capital. Talk to us about the cuts in capital that you've gone through with the pandemic.
Well, Pat, just next month at this time, October 1st, we celebrate 80 years as a roadway. So you think about the road, the 552 miles, a significant portion of which is still under that original design and original structure. So the capital demands of a road that old are vast. And just with COVID, we had to make the painful decision of cutting out 24% of our capital plan this year. And we made the decision not to stop any projects that were currently in progress because for safety reasons, for responsibility, and for a lot of reasons. So the number we got to are 24% in basically basic delays. So that speaks back to the question about Act 44. With that obligation, we're not feeding the asset to near the level that we want to. And with COVID, we've also now had to slow down feeding the asset in the manner that we want to keep up with what's an 80-year-old roadway. So Act 44 keeps me up at night because in large fact, we can't feed the asset in the manner that we believe we should be based on its age and based on our traffic.
Mark, here's a big vision question from Brenda Beal. She asks, what do you see as the biggest opportunity for the future of toll agencies coming from this pandemic and related changes?
One of my favorite quotes that I've been saying to all of our folks really comes from the former CEO of Intel, and Andy Grove. And that reads, bad companies are destroyed by crisis, good companies survive them, great companies are improved by them. And you think about the way in which we've changed and adapted as it results to this. So just to give you a sense, here in the building I sit, because of the not using this building, it's $60,000 a month in savings. A small number in comparative to larger budgets. But you think in which the way we're communicating now so much differently. There's clearly a need for in person and getting back. And clearly, we're all saddened by not being in Austin here next week and all those things. But we can't forget what we've learned through this effort, and we can't forget. I think we're going to be a better employer because of it, because of some of the things that we can offer people that we never heretofore would think about, whether that's working from home at times. Also, to think, what we've had to do in a quick flip the switch of AET, what we now have to do in the back end of customer service is always going to be a better angle for our customers. But we got to remember what got us through here, and that's the shame of this whole thing is if we forget that and go back to all of our old ways. And I must say, in some ways, some of our old inefficient ways.
Mark, the pandemic has obviously had effects on IBTTA and the way we deliver services to the members. A lot of us have said, oh, poor Sam, he didn't get to have any in-person meetings this year, but we might not have many in-person meetings for the foreseeable future. But on the silver lining side, the fact that we've gone virtual has enabled many more people to participate in meetings than ever before. Talk to us about how you see that playing out, the significance of that for IBTTA and the industry.
So some of the wisdom we see now that we didn't see back then was really getting the board together back in January at Coral Gables. And if you recall those conversations, is what would we do if we lost one of our biggest moneymakers, which was the meetings? What position would that put us in? We had significant conversation around that. Well, I must tell you, with Samuel's leadership and his partnership with you, Pat, you and the staff have done an outstanding job, and probably the best of any association that we've belonged to in getting stuff like this and content into members. And what I love about this is just what you said. Because the annual is virtual, there isn't 6 of us sitting in Austin, but there could be 40 of us on the in front of our computers listening to different segments of the presentations. That's the beauty of this, and that's some of the stuff we've got to make sure that we remember moving forward. We can do the hybrid, and if we're, of course, we want to be in person next year. But I think when we talk about some of the things we're going to lay out next year, it's not going to be a lost year regardless, and we're going to make sure that we're making progress for for the association, for the industry. And I think next year can still be a banner year. Like I said, I hope we're together in Coral Gables. I hope we start off differently, but if we don't, it's not going to be a lost year, I assure you that.
Mark, Samuel Johnson has appointed this year a task force on diversity, social, and racial inclusion. And you've said to me in other conversations that 2021 would not be, well, let's see. All right. I guess I'll wait to.
Sorry about that. There was oddly enough, my computer phone was going off. Never happened before.
All right. So we were talking about the diversity task force that Samuel appointed this year. You mentioned to me in another conversation that 2021 wouldn't be a success unless that task force is a success. You have a member of your team on that task force. Talk to us about the significance of this moment in our history about social and racial justice and how it's going to affect us, things going forward in 2021.
Yeah, sure. And I just want to applaud Samuel for getting this off the ground, and a special thanks to Joy and Farzan for leading this effort. And I really appreciated the conversation that started, I think it was last week, with this group. If not us, who? If not now, when? The time is now. It's far overdue. And I know my experience as a middle-aged white guy living now in Lancaster County is much different than many of the folks on that task force, and for the reasons that we're here. So people like me need to really be open, and those words are true, Pat. Next year won't be a success if that group isn't a success. We're going to make sure. And I just also want to thank the leadership who's agreed to stay on through Samuel's year in the mine, and the conversation between Samuel, myself, Diane, has been about continuity and making sure that group is resourced in the manner and has the voice it needs. With the amount of firepower on that group, they're poised to do great things. I'm just standing by, waiting to see the change that we need, so desperately need.
And Joy Dean writes that she's looking forward to continuing the work on the diversity task force, and says that they had a great meeting last week. Ed Regan has a question about, he wants me to clarify my comments about in-person meetings. And I'll just say, Ed, and to everybody, that we have contracts next year for two big meetings, the Technology Summit in May and the annual meeting in October. They're locked in and locked down. We haven't signed any other contracts yet. We do plan to hold in-person meetings if it's safe to do so, but it's all going to depend on the environment that we're in and the availability of vaccines and what condition America and the world are in at that time. So our intention is to go with in-person meetings, but we want to do it in a way that's safely. Mark, we've talked about the culture of innovation at PTC. Tell me a little bit more what that means, your culture of innovation, and how it drives you and the team.
Sure, and really the key part of that is this group always asking themselves, how can we do it better? How can we do it differently? And we talk about our comparators a lot of times, and really here we strive to make sure whichever aspect we're measuring, we do so the right way, and we make sure we're measuring the right people. So if you want to be best in class in customer service, who are you measuring against? If you're measuring yourself against safety, who's best in class, and working to strive to get there. It's not being afraid of that, and it's also not being afraid to reach out and benchmark and steal ideas, realizing that you don't have the same. I love the fact that our folks here are always reaching out, always are striving to try to get to that next level, and that's what I love most. And really, that really emanated it last year as we put together our new strategic plan. Was to really, and the innovation's a key part of that, but also we use the word restorative, continual through that, which is how do we make sure that we lessen our footprint and do that in such a manner. So, I got to tell you, I've worked a lot of places, but I'm really having a blast with these folks, even in these tough times. And I couldn't ask for a better set of colleagues.
Mark, I'm going to pause for just a minute to make a few announcements before we wrap up. Next week and the next 2 weeks, Café IBTTA is taking a holiday to make room for the IBTTA board meeting and the annual meeting. Our next edition of Café IBTTA will be on September 23rd, and our guest will be Rob Hoare, the 2013 president of IBTTA, who now works for Atkins. Let's talk about the annual meeting. We have almost 600 registrants so far. There's no time like the present to register. There are a couple of very important steps you need to take to get registered and have access to the meeting platform. So take your time and get ready so that you're not scrambling at the last minute. Then spend some time with the schedule and plan your program. Here's a couple of instructions to register and get access to that platform. First, you have to register through ibtta.org like usual for the meeting. Then you'll receive directions in your confirmation email to go to the web app. And if you attended the virtual maintenance meeting, you already have an app account. So all you need to do is sign in after you register through ibtta.org. And again, it's free. So take a few minutes and prepare your web account. Just a couple highlights about the annual meeting. The Toll Excellence Awards session will take place on September 10th. So we have kind of a bifurcated annual meeting. It's next Thursday, September 10th, one day of programming, and then the following week, September 14 through 16, with the rest of the programming. So we have the Women in Tolling Trailblazer session also on September 10th. We're going to hear from some of the best women in our industry. On September 14 through 16, that Monday through Wednesday, we have 45 exhibitors in a virtual exhibit hall with a scavenger hunt, and the prize is $500. We have 2 virtual technical tours led by TxDOT and CTRMA. We have general sessions on the subjects of cybersecurity, business continuity, and finance. We have 2 very interesting tracks on connected communities and the change revolution. And we also have Zoom hangout rooms for the Women in Tolling Council, Leadership Academy Alumni Association, and the Young Professionals Council. All of this is on the app that I talked about before once you register and download the IBTTA Meetings app. Finally, we're going to have a social event with networking. It's the Monday evening event using the theme Keep the Annual Meeting Weird, an homage to Austin. This time we're joining lots of our friends from Austin and learning how to make salsa, guacamole, margaritas, and ranch water at Vamonos, an Austin, Texas ranch-style restaurant. Please visit ibtta.org for information on the annual meeting and all of our upcoming events. Mark, it's been great having you with us today. What final wisdom would you like to share with members of the industry?
Sure, Pat, and thanks again for having me. I think what I've learned most about being a member of IBTTA, serving in this role, and also going through COVID is you're never alone when you're in IBTTA. Special thanks to everyone who's reached out to us here at PTC with what we've gone through with the layoffs. And I got to tell you, the relationships just keep getting stronger, even though we're not in person. So that's one thing. We're not together, but we are together. And to that point, just one special shout out to please keep the Yakabuchi family in your prayers. Just learned today that he lost his dad over the weekend. So Tony Yakabuchi of the Ohio Turnpike, you are in our hearts and prayers.
Mark, thank you very much. It was great having you on the show. And thanks to you, the members of IBTTA. Be safe, keep in touch, and we'll see you down the road. Thanks, everybody.